to unpack about human nature here. You've given us so much to think about. It seems like you're on this quest to figure out what makes people tick, why we do the things we do, both to ourselves and to others.
It's like a puzzle, isn't it?
Totally. So in this deep dive, let's try to uncover some of those hidden forces, like what are the subtle cues that might actually betray our true intentions? And what about those patterns that keep popping up in our lives?
Right, and one of the most intriguing things these excerpts highlight is this idea that we're not nearly as rational as we like to believe.
Oh, I'm with you there. We tell ourselves we make decisions based on logic, but then, bam, we do something totally irrational.
Exactly. We're ruled by emotions way more than we realize, and that's where this whole concept of the emotional self comes in. Think of it like that gut feeling that can just completely hijack our best laid plans.
It's like you're prepared for that big presentation, but your stomach is doing flip-flops.
Exactly. Logically, you're good to go, but that knot in your stomach, that's your emotional self hitting the gas while logic is slamming on the brakes.
And sometimes it feels like there's no stopping it. Like that story about the American student in Paris. He goes there with these romantic visions, but his own negativity just colors everything.
It's a perfect example of how our attitude really does shape our reality. He was so busy looking for flaws that he completely missed the beauty staring him right in the face.
It makes you wonder how many times we do that, misinterpreting situations or even misjudging people because of our own baggage.
All the time, it's like we're wearing these tinted glasses we don't even realize are there.
Speaking of hidden things, what about nonverbal communication? It's like our bodies are speaking a secret language, sometimes even contradicting the words coming out of our mouths.
It's fascinating, isn't it? We might carefully choose our words to present a certain image, but our bodies often tell a very different story.
Like someone giving you a super firm handshake, trying to seem confident, but then you notice their other hand is like unconsciously twisting in their lap.
A classic tell. Or they might give you this big, warm smile, but if you look closely, their eyes are sending a completely different message. Learning to read those nonverbal cues can really change the game in how we understand and interact with others.
So it's like becoming a human lie detector.
In a way, yes. But it's not always about deception. Sometimes it's just about recognizing those subconscious leaks of emotion.
Yeah.
Like, have you ever noticed how when someone is truly relaxed and at ease, their body language seems to sort of, well, rub off on you?
Yeah, like their calmness makes you feel calmer too.
Exactly. That's called synchrony. It's a subtle mirroring of body language that happens when people are feeling a sense of connection. Then you have tension cues. Those are the little giveaways that someone might be trying a little too hard to control their outward appearance.
So picture a politician giving a big speech full of confidence and charisma. But if you look closely, you notice a slight tremor in their hand.
Precisely. It's a tiny detail that reveals a whole lot about what's going on beneath the surface. And don't forget about pacifying gestures, things like touching the face or neck, which often signal insecurity or anxiety, even in people who seem totally in control.
It's like those in positions of power are almost easier to read because they're so used to controlling their words.
It's true. They might have their words perfectly scripted, but those deeper emotions often leak out in their body language. If you know what to look for, it's all right there.
So we've got emotions betraying our carefully crafted personas, and then our bodies practically shouting out what we're really thinking. Where do we even get from here?
Well, recognizing these hidden forces in ourselves is a good first step, but to really navigate the social landscape, we need to learn how to decode other people, especially the ones who might be a little more, well, challenging to deal with.
Okay, so it's like we're learning a whole new language here, the language of human nature.
You could say that.
But some dialects are definitely trickier to master than others.
Right. Absolutely. And that brings us to those folks who are prone to what the excerpts call high-grade irrationality. Basically, those moments when emotions just totally hijack our better judgment.
Yeah, we've all been there. That I'm going to flick this table kind of energy.
Exactly. But it seems like some personality types are more susceptible to these emotional hijackings than others.
So we're talking about those patterns that can make certain people particularly difficult to deal with.
Exactly. And understanding those patterns, well, it's like having a cheat sheet for navigating those tricky interactions.
Okay, I'm intrigued. Lay it on me. What kind of patterns are we talking about?
Well, one that stands out is the deep narcissist.
Ooh. That sounds intense. We're not talking about your average, I love taking selfies kind of person, right?
No. Think more like Howard Hughes.
Yeah.
Brilliant, ambitious, but notoriously difficult to work with.
Okay, I get it. So what makes him so challenging?
Deep narcissists often have this incredible need for validation, this constant hunger to feel important. And the problem is they tend to see other people as, well, objects that exist solely to satisfy that need.
So it's less about being selfish and more about needing to control others to prop up their own ego.
Precisely. And the really fascinating part is what happens when that carefully constructed ego is threatened.
What, like, watch out?
You could say that.
Mhm.
When their grandiosity is challenged, deep narcissists can become volatile, even destructive.
Okay, good to know. So maybe tread lightly around those types. What other challenging characters are lurking out there?
Well, there are the toxic types, those masters of disguise with their hidden agendas. Ever feel like you're walking on eggshells around someone?
Oh yeah, you're always second-guessing yourself. Like, did I say the wrong thing?
You might be dealing with a toxic type. It's like they're playing a game and you don't even know the rules.
No fair.
Eh?
So how do we spot these toxic types before we get caught in their web?
Well, take the personalizer. You offer a little constructive criticism, and suddenly it's a personal attack. You end up feeling like you did something wrong just for speaking your mind.
It's exhausting.
Yeah.
Okay, what about other toxic types?
You've got the pleaser. They're like super accommodating at first, always saying yes, always bending over backward. But that constant need for approval, it can actually be a subtle form of manipulation.
It's like they're racking up favors you didn't even agree to.
Exactly. And then there's the concept of the shadow, that hidden part of ourselves we try to keep under wraps.
Oh, right, like the Jungian thing. It's kind of scary when you think about it.
Well, it doesn't have to be scary. It's just recognizing that we all have these less flattering aspects of ourselves that we'd rather not acknowledge.
So that inner voice that tells you to eat the entire pizza. That's my shadow.
Well, maybe. But on a more serious note, recognizing our own shadow can actually be a really powerful tool for understanding those inconsistencies we see in other people.
Okay, that's interesting. So, like, if someone is always preaching about honesty, but then you catch them in a lie.
Exactly. It's like a crack in the persona they're trying so hard to project. Or take the saint. They seem incredibly selfless, always putting others first, but sometimes that can mask deeper insecurities, even a need for control.
So their shadow side might be those subtle digs that make you feel guilty for not being as selfless as they are.
Exactly. And then you have the fanatic. Now, passion and conviction, those are great qualities, right?
Sure.
But taken to an extreme, that single-mindedness can make people blind to their own flaws.
They're so focused on their cause that they miss the bigger picture.
Precisely. Their shadow might be this inability to tolerate dissenting viewpoints or even a tendency toward dogma and judgment.
So we've got narcissists, we've got toxic types, and we've all got our own shadows to contend with. It's like we're navigating a minefield out there.
Well, it can feel that way sometimes. But remember, not everyone is walking around trying to play mind games.
That's reassuring.
Recognizing these patterns isn't about becoming cynical or distrustful. It's about self-awareness and protection. It allows us to approach these interactions with more awareness, maybe even a little more compassion.
Compassion because, hey, we all have a shadow side, right?
Exactly. Understanding those darker impulses in ourselves and others, it doesn't excuse them. It simply allows us to navigate this whole human experience with our eyes wide open.
So we've got all these different personality types to watch out for, but I have to admit, the idea of actually trying to influence others, it feels kind of, I don't know, manipulative. Like, am I going to turn into some kind of puppet master?
Well, that's certainly one way to look at it, but I think it's much more about understanding what makes people tick. Not to manipulate them, but to connect with them in a more authentic, more effective way.
Okay, so less puppet master, more like influential friend.
Exactly. It's about using your understanding of human nature to build bridges, not to control people.
I like the sound of that. So where do we even begin?
Well, the excerpt suggests a rather surprising starting point. Functional narcissism.
Functional narcissism. Okay, that sounds like an oxymoron. I thought all narcissism was bad.
It's not quite as contradictory as it sounds. Think of it as that healthy dose of self-regard we all need to function in the world.
Okay, so we all have a little bit of that in us.
Yeah.
But how does that help us influence others?
Well, instead of trying to force our opinions on people, we can actually become more persuasive by subtly validating their self-perception, make them feel heard, make them feel understood.
So it's like that friend who just gets you, They make you feel smart and capable just by listening.
Exactly. And when someone makes you feel good about yourself, well, you're much more likely to be receptive to their ideas, right?
It's so true. It's like that saying, people don't care how much you know until they know how much you care.
Exactly. And there are some fascinating historical examples of this. Take Coco Chanel, for instance. She was a master at tapping into people's unspoken desires,
Mm.
creating this aura of exclusivity around her brand.
She understood that people don't just want to buy a product, they want to buy into a feeling.
Precisely. Chanel's genius was in her ability to understand and then appeal to that deeper need for validation.
Fascinating. So we've got this idea of functional narcissism. What other tools do we have in our persuasion toolkit?
Well, as basic as it sounds, never underestimate the power of truly listening to someone, not just waiting for your turn to speak, but really trying to understand their perspective.
Yeah, that makes sense. What else?
Oh, and don't underestimate the power of a little strategic withholding.
Strategic withholding. Okay, you've lost me. What's that?
Think of it like this. Sometimes holding back a little information can actually make you more persuasive. Pique their curiosity. Make them work a little to earn that knowledge.
So it's like create a little mystery, make them lean in.
Exactly. A little intrigue can go a long way.
Okay, so we're talking about understanding human nature, appealing to their need for validation, being a good listener, and maybe even withholding a little information to keep them interested. This is starting to sound less like manipulation and more like, well, just being a good communicator.
It's all connected, isn't it?
It is. But even when we're communicating well and connecting with others, there's still this tendency to, I don't know, always be looking for something better. You know that grass is always greener syndrome.
Oh, absolutely. That feeling that we're missing out on something can be a real happiness killer.
It's like we're always chasing that next shiny object, never quite content with what we have.
Which is why the excerpts emphasize the importance of finding and cultivating a strong sense of purpose. It's like an antidote to that restless craving.
Okay, so instead of always looking for external validation, we find that sense of fulfillment from within.
Exactly. We stop chasing after what we think we should want and start focusing on what truly resonates with us, with our values, like Anton Chekhov, for example.
Oh, right. He faced some incredibly difficult challenges in his life.
He did, but despite those challenges, he found this incredible sense of freedom and purpose through his writing.
He chose to focus on what he could control, his craft, his creativity, and in doing so, he created meaning, even in the midst of all that adversity.
It's a powerful reminder that true happiness, it often comes from shifting our internal landscape rather than constantly seeking external validation.
And that brings us to, what was that other concept from the excerpts? The sublime.
Yes. Think of it as that awe-inspiring feeling you get when you look up at a star-filled sky or contemplate the vastness of the ocean.
That sense of wonder, of connection to something so much bigger than ourselves.
Precisely. And the excerpt suggests that embracing our own mortality, really sitting with the fact that our time here is finite, well, it can be incredibly motivating.
Because it reminds us that this life is precious.
It is. It helps us prioritize what really matters, connect more deeply with ourselves and others, and ultimately live more fully in the present moment.
Wow, we've covered so much ground in this deep dive. From the hidden forces driving our behavior, to the secrets of persuasion, to the importance of finding our purpose. It's been quite a journey.
It has. And I think the most important takeaway is that understanding these laws of human nature can help us all navigate this messy, beautiful thing called life with more awareness, more compassion, and dare I say, even a touch of awe.
I couldn't agree more. It's like we've been given this incredible map, and now it's up to us to use it.
Exactly. The real question is, how will you use this knowledge to create a more fulfilling life for yourself and those around you? What hidden forces will you uncover? What connections will you forge?
That is the question, isn't it? And on that note, I think we've given our listeners plenty to ponder. Until next time, happy exploring.